While most of the Subnautica main story centers around the crashed Aurora ship, the downed Mongolian cruiser the Degassi might be even more interesting. Of its original 6 crew members, only 3 survived the crash: Paul Torgal and his son Bart Torgal, as well as the woman of the hour, Marguerite Maida, a mercenary protecting the ship. They were able to slowly build up a base of operations on a nearby island as well as underwater, but soon realized they had become infected with the Kara bacterium on the planet and didn't have long to live. In order to help their odds of survival, Margaret tracked a Reaper Leviathan back to their base so Paul could study it for findings on the Kara. But sadly, another Reaper Leviathan had followed Margaret and ended up leveling the base. In an attempt to save Paul and Bart, Margaret fought the Reaper Leviathan in her prawn suit as it carried her deep into the void, never again to be seen. That is until Subnautica Below Zero released, where we do actually meet Marguerite Maida on Delta Island. It's here we learn that the Leviathan carried Margaret for miles on end through the void, and she only managed to narrowly kill the monster and then swim to the surface. She used the corpse of the monster to make shelter in the middle of the ocean and survived for 3 weeks until she hit landfall in Sector 0, otherwise known as Below Zero. This is why later in Below Zero we also are able to find her and speak to her. The real mystery though comes from just what exactly Margaret saw in the void, and more importantly, how she survived with the Kara bacterium now for over a decade. Some theories postulate that Margaret simply is stronger than most people, or has a natural immunity, but for me, that just doesn't make enough sense. After all, most people are dying within a week. 10 years seems excessive. A more likely scenario is that a peeper that had crossed a precursor vent had some of the enzyme 42 serum on it that helped Margaret survive longer. But in this form, it would not have been a cure, just an aid for some time. So it still begs the question, how is Margaret still alive and kicking almost a decade later? Well, here comes the really interesting lore. Because in Subnautica Below Zero, the zone that a good portion of the map takes place on did not have any enzyme 42 treatment taking place for over 1,000 years, meaning any and everything should be dead and long gone. But when we arrive, that's most certainly not the case. For example, we can find a fossilized but still alive Leviathan that is heavily infected but not dead even after thousands of years. The only issue with this though is if there is something in Sector 0 that is causing a cure for the Kara, why didn't more precursors settle here, and why is there no talk of a cure in the logs? The final and potentially best theory is that consuming the Reaper Leviathan's flesh saved Margaret. You see, the only animals in Subnautica that do not show signs of the Kara are a very small handful of the Leviathans, implying that some of them have somehow grown in immunity. Maybe by consuming an entire Reaper Leviathan to stay alive, Margaret also accidentally cured herself of the Kara. My personal issue with this theory though is if this were the case, how is this not discovered by anyone else by this point? Sure, the Leviathans could be hard to study due to their aggression and size, as we've already seen, but surely by this point someone would have discovered this. For me, the best explanation is that something happened while Margaret was being carried around by the Reaper Leviathan in the void, and she came into contact with a mysterious and powerful something that cured her, something that might be explored even deeper in the void in a future game.